Before we go any further, if you value serious historical insight grounded in evidence rather than marketing claims, subscribe to History Vault now. What follows is not a list of folk remedies. It is a reconstruction of how medieval builders solved wood rot centuries before modern chemistry, and why their methods still outperform many products sold today. Medieval builders faced a relentless enemy. Moisture destroyed homes, halls, bridges and ships long before enemies ever could. Failure was public and catastrophic. There were no coatings shipped in barrels, no pressure-treated lumber, and no synthetic barriers. Yet timber frames, roof structures, harbour works and churches endured for centuries. The reason was not luck or superstition. It was a disciplined system that controlled moisture, preserved wood fibres, and designed structures to work with nature instead of against it. You see, medieval builders understood rot not as something that just happened with the passage of time, but rather as a problem caused by moisture. They recognized, through experience, that the real culprit behind the decay of wood was, more often than not, persistent dampness. Rot, well, it doesn't actually begin because wood simply grows old. Instead, it starts when fungi are, given the right conditions. Continuous moisture, a bit of oxygen, and of course, enough time. Without moisture, fungi just can't get a foothold. Medieval craftsmen, interestingly enough, came to understand all this not through scientific theory, but by careful observation. They noticed that timber, which dried quickly after a rainstorm, tended to survive, while timber that stayed damp would unfortunately fail. Their knowledge was rooted in what they saw, rather than what they were told. Their solution was never to trap wood behind an impermeable shell. Instead, they ensured that water could not remain where it did damage. This single insight shaped every stage of medieval construction. How cutting and seasoning timber removed decay before it could begin. Trees were cut during colder months when sap flow was minimal. Less sap meant less internal moisture and fewer nutrients for decay organisms. After felling, logs were not rushed into use. They were stacked off the ground, protected from direct rain, and exposed to wind for extended periods. This slow seasoning process equalized moisture throughout the wood. It reduced internal stress, minimized cracking, and created timber that resisted decay naturally. Modern builders can apply this principle by allowing lumber to acclimate for months before outdoor use, rather than relying on treatments to compensate for haste. Now, you might wonder why medieval carpenters chose to split wood instead of sawing it whenever possible. Well, splitting actually follows the natural grain of the wood, which in turn preserves those long, unbroken fibres. Sawing, on the other hand, cuts right across those fibres, opening up these tiny microscopic channels that, draw moisture deep into the structure. Medieval roof shingles, beams and planks were often riven rather than sawn. That's actually why so many of them have survived centuries of exposure. So applying this today means, using split posts for fencing, riven shingles for roofing, and hand-cleft rails for outdoor structures where, longevity really matters. How controlled surface charring made wood hostile to rot organisms. Fire was actually one of the most effective medieval preservation tools. Wood intended for ground contact or high moisture exposure was, lightly charred. This was not burning for strength, but rather a controlled surface treatment. Charring sealed surface pores, expelled remaining moisture, destroyed spores and insect eggs, and, created a carbon-rich layer that fungi simply cannot digest. For modern use, lightly torching the buried end of a post or the underside of a beam before installation, it dramatically extends service life. Why oils replace coatings and allowed wood to breathe? Instead of paint or tar, medieval builders used natural oils and fats. Linseed oil, animal fats, and fish oils penetrated deep into wood fibres. These substances repelled liquid water while allowing vapour to escape. Modern coatings often trap moisture beneath a rigid surface. When cracks form, decay accelerates unseen. Medieval oil treatments avoided this failure by remaining flexible and breathable. Today, warm-applied boiled linseed oil remains, one of the closest functional equivalents. How medieval design prevented water from lingering in the first place. No treatment could compensate for poor design, and medieval builders knew it. Wooden elements were elevated on stone. Roofs were steep with generous overhangs. Joints were shaped to shed water rather than trap it. This design philosophy ensured rapid drying after rain. Applying this principle today means prioritizing airflow, drainage, and gravity before considering any finish or treatment. Why maintenance was expected and rewarded rather than avoided. Medieval builders did not expect wood to be left untouched for decades. Oils were reapplied and, surfaces were refreshed. Modern construction often promises permanence. Medieval construction promised survivability. The difference is visible in the record left behind. How these medieval methods can still be applied today. Choose dense, straight-grained wood. Season it slowly, split rather than saw where possible. Lightly char vulnerable surfaces. Apply penetrating oils generously. Design structures to breathe and shed water. Maintain periodically instead of replacing. These steps do not rely on nostalgia. They rely on physics, biology, and centuries of proof. If you found this guide valuable and want more historically grounded knowledge preserved and explained with clarity, subscribe to History Vault now. Share this with fellow history enthusiasts, builders and survivalists who respect methods that endured long before modern chemicals existed and continue to work today.